All right, so what we're talking about today is section 3.5, graphing linear equations when you have slope-intercept form. This is part 2. Last week, or last section, we went ahead and talked about the slope. And so now what we're going to be doing is we are focusing on graphing slope-intercept form. Okay, that's the focus of today's lesson. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope, and remember that's rise over run, and b is the y-intercept. And so that's where it crosses your y-axis. Okay, so that's what that is. It's where it crosses the y-axis somewhere. Okay, so there's some steps that you have to be able to follow to graph and slope-intercept form. The first thing you need to be able to do is you need to be able to solve the equation for y. So that means if you have a problem like 2x plus y equals 5, you're going to have to subtract 2x on both sides, and then you would have y by itself. And remember, you can't combine these two things because numbers can't go with variables, and so we just keep them separate. The next thing you want to do is you want to label your m and your b. So for this problem, my m, and it's for all problems, your m is what's attached to your x, and so my m is -2. But remember, slope is a fraction, so I'm going to go ahead and make that a fraction right now by putting 2 over 1. And then my b is the number, and my constant, the number is 5. And so there's my m and my b for that problem. Now the next thing, you graph the b. You start off at b, and think about that maybe as b is for beginning, and you either go up or down on the y-axis, because remember, the y-axis is where we start. So I'm going to draw this. My y-intercept is 5. So I'm going to start off by drawing my axis and making my tick marks. Since my b is 5, I know I'm going to go up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now my slope, that's the second point. From the point on the y-axis, you count the slope, rise over run. So my slope is -2 over 1, so I'm going to go down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1, and I continue that process. It'll be much easier when you have an actual coordinate plane like our examples, but I just wanted to do that whole problem so you could see. So let's look at these two down here. I'd like you to start off by seeing if you can identify what your m and your b is. And so for this one, your m, again, is always attached to the x, so it's 2/3, and your b is -1. And over here, my m is -3, which I need to turn into a slope because it's rise over run, so I'm going to make it over 1. And my b is 4. So you always start at b because that's the beginning. So with a -1, I go down 1. And now I'm going to count this slope up 2 over 3. So up 1, 2, over 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to continue that until I go off the grid. Up 1, 2, over 1, 2, 3. Now I want my line to continue the opposite way, so I'm going to go down 2 and to the left 3. Down 2 and to the left 3. And there's my linear function. The same thing over here. I'm going to start at b, my beginning, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this time it's down 3 and over 1. So down 1, 2, 3, over 1 to the right. Down 1, 2, 3, over 1. And if I went the other way, it would be up 1, 2, 3, over 1. So it's 1 off my grid, but that's okay. And there's your linear function. But really, when you're graphing these, if you follow these steps right here, then you'll be good to go. So the steps are to solve for x, solve for y, identify your m and your b, graph the b, and then count the m. So let's look at our examples. So what I'd like you to do is find the m and the b for each problem and graph them. When you think that you have them all, press play so that you could check your work. So you should have had 2 and 3. So that's 2 over 1. So I started a positive 3 up 2 over 1. And then I go the other way. For number 2, my slope was 1/2 and a -1. So I start at -1. Remember, you always start going up or down. You're never going to go left or right. You always go up or down. So now this is 1/2, so it's up 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2. I'm going to continue that pattern. All right, for number 3, the slope, well, there's a -1 there. You can't see the 1, but remember, whenever you don't see a number, it's 1. So it's -1 over 1, and my b is 2. So I go up 2, and that means I go down 1 and over 1. And I'm going to go the other way. And there's my linear function. So again, identify the m and the b, graph the b, and count the slope. All right, so for the next ones, it's a little harder because you have to solve first. So I have to get y by itself, so I need to move this 2x. So I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides. And I get y is equal to -2x plus 4. It's helpful if you keep them in the same order. Sometimes students, when you mix up the orders, you get confused. Remember, your m is next to the x, so it's -2 over 1. And the b is the number by itself. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to try and graph number 4. And then when you think you got it, press play. You should have 4 and then down 2 over 1 the whole way. And then up the other way. All right, for number 5, we draw our line down. First thing I need to do is move the x. So this is a positive x, so I subtract for x. Now I need you to be careful with this because a lot of people are going to forget this, but this is not just a 3, it's a -3. So it's -3y equals -x minus 6. And the way you get rid of a times -3 is by dividing everything by -3. Well, these two negatives become positive, so it's x over 3. And -6 divided by -3 is a positive 2. My m and my b is the easy one to see because it's the number by itself, but my m's a little trickier. I know that it's to divide by 3, but you have to recognize what's on top. That's right, the thing on top is a 1. So now I'm going to graph that. I'm going to go up to 2 and then up 1 over 3. So for these, probably the hardest part is going to be making sure you solve it correctly. So let's look at the last one. I have to move this 4x. So I'm minus 4x. Now again, I don't just have a y, I have this -y. So I need to write that. -y is equal to -4x. Now you can write +0 or you can leave it blank. I'm going to write +0 because that's going to help me remember my intercept. Now this is a -1 times y, so I'm going to divide everything by -1. And so now I have 4x plus 0, because 0 divided by -1 is still 0. So my m is 4, but remember m has to be a slope, it has to be a fraction, it has to be rise over run. So it's 4 over 1, and my b is 0. So my b is 0 just means I don't go up or down any, it's right here. But now my slope is 4 over 1, so I go up 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. I can't go up 4 more and over 1, so I'll go down. 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1. And there's your steep line. So when you're doing all of these problems, remember these steps. Solve for y, label the m and b, graph the b, and then do the slope.